All right. Without further ado, we're going to take care of, the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. They're the ones that put this on. First of all, a big thank you and a round of applause to Ed and Jane and the staff from the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. Many of you look forward to this event every year. Certainly something that I put on my calendar. It's a lot of fun. So without further ado, I want to bring Ed Naile up. For those of you that listen to my program on WNTK and WUVR, I've had this gentleman on a number of times talking about voter fraud, which, by the way, doesn't happen, remember, because that's all a vast right-wing conspiracy. But in fact, it does happen. It does happen on both sides of the political aisle. And I don't care whether it's Democrat, Republican, Libertarian. I don't care if you would elect a purple rutabaga. The bottom line is anything that jeopardizes the integrity of our electoral process needs to be investigated and it needs to be prosecuted. The full weight of the law needs to be put behind maintaining the integrity of our electoral system. Without it, we're wasting our time. This man is a tireless watchdog. Ed Naile.
All right, I'm looking out over a group of what I call multipliers. You guys come to these cookouts every year. I recognize most of the faces here, and then when we have banner years, we get a crowd. Very first CNHT picnic, we had 1,500 people, and we sold all the tickets a week in advance. So we got a lot of names back then, and people drifted off. But this is the rock-solid group of what I call multipliers. And I consider myself a multiplier because wherever I go around election time, they go, "Hey, Ed, who should I vote for?" Sound familiar? I know you know about politics. Who should I vote for? Man, I'm telling you, Ray Buckley can spend all the money in the world, but when someone walks up to you and says, who should I vote for? And you go, where do you live? If you're in Manchester, it's going to be Victoria Sullivan, right? So I can say, just get these names, write these names. Anybody running, if I know who they are and they're a good candidate, and I tell them, they're going to get that vote from that person. They wouldn't have walked up to me and asked. So thank you for coming, multipliers, and doing what you do. Our taxpayers group, I don't toot our horn very often. We're actually pretty busy. There's a handful of us left. We've lost some of our best people. Howard Dilworth, you remember him? Before we had computers, we had Howard Dilworth. We could beat anybody with a laptop because we had Howard. You say, Howard, Clapp versus Jaffrey. Oh, that was 1989. It was a Supreme Court case held in October, and he would rattle the whole thing off. But we miss him, and we lost Diane Gilbert's Patriot partner, Paul Spidell, passed away a couple weeks ago. So I want to acknowledge that. Here's a guy, every time we had an event, Paul and Diane are there. So I just want to mention that we lose these people. We need new people coming in. What we've done recently is I've kind of given up on some of the voter fraud stuff in the towns. I think the feds is the way to go and win. I filed a motion in federal court to intervene, and the judge, was a beautiful piece of work, I think. And it was patterned after other motions to intervene, and I handed it in. And the judge denied me, kicked it out, and he said, but it was very interesting. So he liked the stuff I filed. Well, then why didn't you leave it in, federal judge? And he kicked me out before he even heard the state's end, which I haven't seen. So that's nice, going to federal court. I've also been down to the feds to return people in who are voting here illegally. And they handed over to the New Hampshire AG, right? To Bud Fitch. So here's the most recent letter I got. I turned in a lawyer from Philadelphia. So he was working for Bernie Sanders. So I turned him in. I said, here's his multiple homes, multiple phone numbers. Here's all his stuff. And they said, well, he got a driver's license in New Hampshire in 2015. He did? Then why did he have his check sent to the office of Bernie Sanders or other places and not to his home if he lives? On that driver's license must have an address. Why don't you use that to vote? So there were a number of things. He's a lawyer from Philadelphia, and every year he has to re-up his New York bar license to practice law and say where he lives. So as of 2018, he said, I live in Radnor, Pennsylvania, outside of Philadelphia. So I called on Monday, earlier this week, and I said, yeah, I'm calling about attorney Adam Huberty. Have you heard from him yet? Oh, I said he would be the guy out of Radnor. So in 2018, he told the New York Bar Association he lived in Radnor, where his house is, So the New Hampshire AG did a nice little, what I call whitewash of that. Unless they have other facts I can't find. So I'm battling away on that on a regular basis. Andy and I, like 7 years ago, we both filed motions to intervene in front of Judge Lewis, and he kicked them out. He kicked my case out, and when I left the room, put me back in. Just nutty stuff. But eventually, I think we get a good president in, and they say, I'd like to win states from now on. How about sending some federal help to prosecute voter fraud, which we don't do here in New Hampshire, unless they catch a Republican couple who's in their 80s. So that and a lot of the stuff that we do takes a long time. Jane was beating up the property takers in Bedford. They have black eyes, and they're set back for probably 2-3 years before they can make a lunge at people's property rights again. So a lot of it. I have a guy who his wife worked for the New Hampshire State Employees Association. All right, and they fired her, I would say unlawfully. So I showed him how to get the documents, and I said, time to get an attorney. So they're waiting. It's going to be a couple more weeks to decide what before a judge. But they admitted basically that yes, we fired her illegally. I use the right to know law to do that. So hopefully the State Employees Union will be sending a check to this guy whose wife was fired because of, I think they just didn't like her, but they screwed up and they're going to pay. And we had Joe Barton won $25,000 from the Attorney General's office from the state of New Hampshire for trying to rough him up while he was watching the polls in, I think, Hudson, whatever town he was in. But Joe Barton, when I was a couple of years, like three years, I think, that went through the courts. And eventually the guy, 4 years I went through. Joe Barton, this guy, I mean, he's not what you would call threatening. He was following the statute, 666, our favorite statute. He was watching the polls, and somebody without a uniform on from the AG's office tried to stop him. And in the end, it wound up in a tussle. Everybody there is basically supporting Joe, and that employee, I believe, is no longer with the AG's office. And that's always good when we're removing people from the election law division. We need to clean that out, and I hope the governor can do that and get some new people in there, or the feds come in and say you can't let people from other states vote here. And by the way, we have that case that I was kicked out of. There's a federal case. The ACLU is helping 2 young ladies from Dartmouth College who live in other states. They're going to college here, and they've already voted here once with their out-of-state driver's license. They want to come back and vote again with their out-of-state driver's license. So I filed a motion to intervene to stop that using law, like the Constitution. That violates my rights when somebody so one's from Arkansas and the other one's from California. When those 2 people steal my vote, that violates my rights. But that federal judge didn't see that. So now we're going to try something else. I'm going to use the state statute that allows me to remove anybody that shouldn't be on the rolls. So I'm going to go up to their county and file it $250. I filed a case and say, this woman is a registered voter in Arkansas, has already voted here with her Arkansas or Arkansas, I think it is, driver's license, and intends to do it again. And I know that because it's in the federal case, saying we intend to vote here again with our out-of-state license, and see what a New Hampshire judge says about that. So I may pull, if I'm lucky, I may pull the 2 plaintiffs that the ACLU has. So I was up against 2 ACLU attorneys from New Hampshire and 2 from New York. And it's funny, I filed a motion to intervene, and the judge says, looks more like an amicus brief to me, so I'm going to kick it out. But the ACLU filed a motion to object to my motion to intervene. So it's a confusing muddle of trying to let people vote here legally when they're doing it illegally. So that's kind of some of the stuff we've been up to, and it's just a grinding effort. The other thing is we have an office that we support with what we raise here and with membership. And in that office, we stockpile stuff that people have completely forgotten about, important things we've done in the past. And I was hoping Karen Testament would be here today because I said, Karen, I got to clean up some of the stuff in the office. Would you like your case against Superintendent Lally in the SPEDIS argument we had? SPEDIS is Special Education Identification System. So it allows a number to be placed for someone who's in special ed. So rather than $12,000 or $13,000 a year for a student, you're paying $150,000 a year. So we're going, well, wait a minute, how long has this child been in our school system? 6, 8, 10 years, what's going on? So we had the SPEDIS numbers, we could say, look, SPEDIS number 3 has been here for 6 years. When does SPEDIS number 3 graduate and leave? So the school said, we can't show you the SPEDIS numbers, which were designed to keep students anonymous. So we went to court and we lost. SPEDIS numbers are something imaginary, I guess, but we lost at the Supreme Court. That's a case Karen Testament did on her own. So it's those bold moves. We don't always win them, but we let them know we're there, and we keep hunting them down. Occasionally Joe Barton or somebody like that will take one of them out. But we're counting on you guys to drag friends to the polls and energize other people, because we don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars like the left does. We're doing this hot dogs, hamburgers, and out of our pocket, and with our friends and people we know. So if we want to keep New Hampshire, this is it. We got to scare the daylights out of them and start dragging people to the polls and convincing people to just listen to you. We need to keep this state free and a wonderful place to live it is. That it is. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
And just a point of clarification, because a lot of times when people use acronyms, they're not familiar with it. So just for those of you who do not know, ACLU stands for American Communist Lawyers Union.
Also, this program's being videotaped by Granite Rock, which gets it out long after we're gone. It's still on Granite Rock, and people can see what happened here. And Keith's show is like a hammer on a forge. He's pounding away at his radio station. I've been on there. We had a great time with Peter Burling. I don't think Peter Burling, he's a former state senator, and he was on election law for, I don't know, 12 years, something like that. A very educated man. And we took him down to like the first grade level. He had to hang up on us. So when we started talking about voter fraud. So it's been a lot of fun working with you guys. Everybody has to work together and row the ship in the same way like the Vikings did. Look what they did.
It was actually kind of interesting to watch former State Senator Peter Burling lose his composure. I do believe he went home and cried himself to sleep on his big Ray Buckley pillow. Quite possibly.
Crop tape.